Cinemania Field Report. Off the Rails. "1977 was a major year in movie history for a number of reasons. First of all, Star Wars appeared seemingly out of nowhere. Along with Jaws in 1975, the blockbuster movie release was firmly born. The idea of the blockbuster was a movie so compelling, with such wide-ranging appeal, that it justified a massive release across the United States, in as many cinemas as possible and for as long as possible. In fact, this kind of release used to be a bad sign. If a studio felt that a movie was doomed, they would just release it as widely as possible all at once so that bad word of mouth couldn't spread in time to hurt ticket sales. Jaws changed all of that, reversing the trend as studios realized that they could hammer audiences with big tentpole releases that everyone would simply have to go and see. But I focus on 1977 for a different reason. The newly invented VHS cassette tape had come of age, and Warner Brothers were in desperate need of some quick cash despite the success of Star Wars. They partnered with a company called Magnetic Video to come up with a whole new idea in media: a movie that you could take home with you, pop into a machine sat under your TV set, and watch whenever you like. This innovation of home cinema would come to define the coming decade as much as the blockbuster, and the twin phenomena of the massive genre hit in cinemas and the movie on VHS tape in the comfort of the home would be joined hand in hand like a twisted magnetic Ouroboros. The first movies given home release were The Sound of Music, Patton, and MASH, big hits in their day, which sprung into new life on tape. But it wasn't long before someone had a brilliant new idea. If a movie does well at the box office, why not go around again for another bite of that apple? Everybody knew at the time that sequels were absolute poison. The only franchises, really, were hits like James Bond and Dirty Harry, which could essentially exist as standalone episodes in each movie, or grandiose epics like The Godfather, which, to be fair, insisted upon itself. But when you add home movies into the mix, even a modest hit at the box office could be spun off into VHS gold. A sequel didn't have to be as good as the original. You just had to generate enough buzz along the built-in fan base of the first movie to bring in those sweet, sweet home movie sales. Therefore, the 1980s became not only the decade of the blockbuster, but also the decade of the slightly worse quality cash-in sequel. The economics of movies had changed. Home cinema meant that as long as a handful of peasants were willing to shell out for the VHS, it made financial sense to churn out a sequel or three. The thing is, most movies were still being treated a bit like a play, with a beginning, middle, and an end, and no expectation of the story going on once the curtain falls. But if the pure creative urge cannot be relied upon to throw out another helping, then a nice big heap of cash with a side order of cocaine can speed things along. Sequels didn't always make much sense. They didn't have to. Nor did they have to obey the established logic of the first film. Who cares about logic when there's money to be made? This is Hollywood, baby. Cash is king. Don't ask questions. The king isn't interested in your questions. So if you have a movie that does well, but not quite well enough to put real money into luxuries like narrative consistency, you occasionally get the perfect conditions for that peculiar denizen of the 1980s and 1990s particularly, the sequel that has gone completely off the rails. The original writer will have been dispatched to pursue new, different, better projects. Any actor from the original who has a better job lined up will be gone. The effects will be shoddy, the music will be perfunctory, and the quality of work will be drudgery. But as we in the Cinemania Society have learned at a deep personal cost, when you toss a few bucks and a camera at a mad film crew with nothing to lose, things can very quickly become strange. And that is how you end up with a sequel that has gone completely off the rails. The immediate beneficiary of the video boom was the horror movie. If Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street can find an audience for a low budget, there's no reason not to keep the party going. The sequels to these well-constructed and compact horror classics may have kept the original slasher, but they soon became bloated with far too much lore. The original Michael Myers of Halloween fame became a family member, a nameless thing, a magical zombie, and more. In the original Friday the 13th, Jason Voorhees was, let's not forget, technically not even the killer. His mother was. But a lumbering mentalist in a mask makes for a better poster than the elderly lady with a grudge, so why worry? Just turn him into an invincible, unkillable death machine and get those cameras rolling. Poor Freddy Krueger was perhaps the biggest victim of sequelitis. Originally, he had been a genuine figure of terror, but as more kids started getting hold of elder siblings' tapes, it very quickly became clear that he was trending towards a younger adult demographic, and he started getting quirky. By the time the 80s had finished, his past had been rewritten so many times that he was just some guy who turns up and does weird crap with knife fingers. Don't worry about it. But we're here to look at the sequels that really pushed the boat out. The original Highlander, for example, had been an unexpected hit of the new MTV era, a pop video stretched out to film length with badass katanas, lightning, a Queen soundtrack, and a ridiculous yet earnest Sean Connery. More importantly, the first film ended with a distinct full stop. They decided to bring back Connery, somehow, and made a sequel that fled straight off the rails. Highlander 2, The Quickening, decided that a compact, neat plot that was silly but structurally sound now involved aliens, the distant future of 2024, the distant past on an alien planet, dudes on flying skateboards, and Michael Ironside in a truly glorious wig. It is what happens when you just add more and more ideas and refuse to cut anything ever. Adding more ideas is one way to throw the sequel out of whack, but equally, a sequel can do the same thing by throwing too much away. Saturday Night Fever had given birth to disco from the heaving loins of John Travolta in 1977 in a furious whirl of teenage rebellion, sex, and shiny white lounge suits. The sequel, in 1983, was called Staying Alive, and it shouldn't have. Following the events of the original, John Travolta is now trying to make it as a dancer on Broadway. Now it's about exploring your feelings on stage, improvising an emotional dance sequence during the show, and strutting around Times Square. Saturday Night Fever worked because at its heart it was about the social codes of an underground scene. And okay, that scene may have been largely made up for the movie, but whatever. The sequel cut all that thoughts and feelings crap out and made it all about dancing really well in order to show your best girl that you like her a lot, while rich New Yorkers all applaud. They forgot what it was all about, man, and if you've never heard of this movie, now you know why. Sometimes a sequel would remember the setup, remember the character motivations, and really try to do more and better, and it would still go absolutely bonkers. Look at Hellraiser 2. In the first movie, it was clear that bad people will come from the bad place if you mess around with their magic box. It's that simple. It's elegant even. In the sequel, we actually get to visit hell and discover that the ancient, unfathomable evil behind it all is a giant floating polygon in a labyrinth. Was less more? Should we have seen behind the curtain? Hard to say when your eyes are bleeding, but an already crazy, nasty little film ended up going completely berserk in the sequel, and from that point on, the Hellraiser series was all about an ever-expanding and brutally arcane set of lore, enough to fill a book. No, a tome. You put these things in a tome. Remember what I said about the actors from the original staying away when they could see a turd coming down the pipe? In 1982, someone decided that it would be a good idea to make a sequel to Grease, of all things. A musical which ended up with the main characters floating off in a flying car, clearly a metaphor for a gruesome death in my book. The sequel was still set in the 60s, but the songs sound more like the 80s. The fish-out-of-water character is a cousin of the original Sandy, but this time it's a British guy for some reason. The original actors who returned aren't exactly crowing about it on their resume, but Michelle Pfeiffer makes an early appearance, so that's something. This is a case of a sequel existing where clearly none should have been. No one minds a musical set in a school. They could have just made a musical set in a school and called it a day. But no, they had to turn it into a completely unnecessary and weird sequel. Nothing about this makes any sense, and the only grease to be found is slathered on the rails that this movie has slid right off of. So, less is more is less. Keep the story, or lose it. Keep the actors, or grab whoever's cheap and available if you can't. The 80s saw an outpouring of sequels that took things in a strange new direction, and we're still living in the shadow of this strange and wonderful time today. But of course, the nature of the sequel has changed. The financial mathematics has shifted, and a sequel can be bigger, bolder, better, and more profitable than ever. Everyone wants a franchise now, and no one's willing to take a risk when the formula that has worked fine once could work again with just a quick lick of paint to fool us into thinking we're seeing something new. I guess what I'm trying to say, with this brief look at the little sequels that could but probably shouldn't, is that there was a time when you could look beyond original movies to get to the weird stuff. Quite often, a perfectly good blockbuster hit can have something truly strange and uncomfortable lurking behind it. I'm talking sequels, baby. Sequels! This episode was written and performed by Andy Slack. Music by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. Incidental sound courtesy of Epidemic Sound.